I recently watched a video and it was called something like Nobody Wants Your Stuff. We sold our stuff and we sold to the tune of $16,000. And when I say $16,000, I am not including any big ticket items. So, in other words, the two cars that we sold and the grand piano, those three items combined brought us $32,000. But I'm not counting any of that when I say we sold to the tune of 16,000. I'm only talking about the items that were in and around the house. The furniture, tools, and other kind of unexpected items that we were able to get money on. Sorry about that. I knocked the phone. So anyway, things like, as I mentioned, furniture, people expect they hopefully can sell that kind of thing. But old VCRs, we were especially shocked by the fact that there were things that we were selling that we had thought would probably have no value. And the reality is that that wasn't the case at all. It was simply a matter of getting some of those items in front of the right people. Even more surprising was that some of the things that really look on the surface like they can't be that appealing to people were among the things that sold the quickest. And I'm talking about things like banged up old golf clubs and items in the tool drawer, things that I call the uglies, things like old nails and rusty hammers and things like that, packaged up and bundled together and advertised to the right people, they sold. We even had a closet full of tiles from the 1980s, really dated and out of fashion. Who in the world would want to buy those? Well, who would want to buy those are construction workers. They're not always going to need tiles in the most beautiful and visible places. And for those areas, those tiles worked just great. They could also mix and match them with more modern tiles and get nice designs going. And hey, we had a shelf full of a few hundred tiles, maybe 200, 300. We got $75 for that. And it may not sound like it's a huge amount of money, but where the money really comes in is when you do enough of this. It's pretty surprising how much those $75 sales start to add up, and even smaller monies. Along those lines, I discovered something even stranger. Sometimes I didn't even have to know what things were worth to get them sold. Again, it was really about getting them packaged the right way and getting them in front of the right buyers. Because when you do that, and the person who comes knocking on your door is looking for exactly what you've got, well, to you, it may feel like, oh, this stuff, you know, I haven't had a need for this in a long time. But the right buyer is going to walk in, and if it's priced right, they're going to say, oh, this is fantastic. And that is exactly what was happening with us. So, anyway, as I had mentioned, we had a drawer full of tools. We also had a toolbox full of tools. And rather than trying to sell a hammer or a screwdriver, that's probably not going to attract most people because they probably pay a few extra dollars to get something brand new. However, if you advertise, I've got a whole drawer full of this junk, well, who's going to be interested will be people like handymen, maybe a handyman who's kind of new, starting out, and doesn't want to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars right away when he doesn't know how his business is going to pan out. Also, people that just like to tinker around the house and do a lot of DIY work. It's so much better to get a whole bag full of things rather than have to, first of all, take the time, and time is money, take the time to be going into a hardware store and picking out one item at a time. Those items also have a way of adding up very, very quickly. But you get a whole drawer full, even if they're a little old and rickety and rusty, All you need to do is spend that $50 to $75 on this bag of stuff and go back and do a couple of repairs on your own and not have to pay a handyman $150 or $250 to do it. And it pays for itself right there. So there's absolutely a calling for these kinds of things if it's marketed the right way. And we had a lot of success doing exactly that. Even more, I think, successful than selling the drawer full of junk was, of all things, and this really did blow me away, old books. Because nowadays the modern thing is e-readers. They're so nice, they're compact, they don't take up any space. Who wants a ratty old book? I'll tell you who wants ratty old books. First of all, people who have their own small business selling used books. Who are they selling them to? People that want to have the book in their hand, that they can feel it, touch it, write notes in it, put it off to the side and say, I'll come back to this tomorrow. And they go back and it's there. It's so nice because they don't have to go flipping through a computer or a phone to find the book. It's right there. There's something nice about being able to hold it in your hand and not have to be reading off of a screen. So turns out there really is a calling for used books. And then the third thing about used books is that if you're thinking about being eco-conscious and you don't want to be buying new books, and so you're typically depending on e-readers and used books, well, the thing about used books is you're not actually adding to the size of your carbon footprint. It's an old book that isn't being recreated just for you to buy it. So there are actually many advantages to having used books. And so what happened was I had a lot of books. I was a pianist, a music theory teacher, and I had a lot of different interests, and so did Greg. And we had accumulated quite a lot of old books. Now, it's definitely too time consuming to try to photograph every single one. There's so many other things to do in preparing for a life of full-time travel. So how I dealt with this was I took a picture of about 15 of the books and I listed them for sale online for something like $1 a book. And again, who called me was somebody who was interested because he wanted to have a business selling used books. So he came over and he said, well, $1 is good per book. I'd like to buy several. Can you make me any kind of a special deal? Well, sure, I could. That's exactly what you want. You want people coming in and saying, oh, this is interesting. Do you have more? So I said, yeah, and I want to make this worth your while. And I showed him the boxes of books, the stacks of books, a whole bookcase filled with mainly books. And he took all the books that fitted his interests in terms of what he thought could sell the best, which was a large percentage of what we had. And he was absolutely giddy. It was so nice to see. He was walking out, boxing up all these books, and I had $280 in my pocket. That's a pretty good day selling used stuff, especially when it's just little things here and there. But there was another fun little surprise about that, which was that the bookcase, especially, it had accumulated not just books, but little things I would throw in there and then forget all about. And one of them was a Canon point and shoot camera from, oh my gosh, 20 years ago, before the cell phones with cameras were the norm. And he looked at that and he said, are you selling this? And again, I thought, well, yeah, I don't want it, but why would anybody else? It just turned out he had a real passion for old technologies. So right away, the light bulb went off in my head and I said, you like old technologies? He said, yeah. And I said, come with me, please. And we went up to our music room where we had a nice sound system, which we wanted to hold on to for the time being. But we also had lots and lots of outdated, you know, old VCRs, old CD players, a Walkman. Walkman, or is it Walkmans? I guess it's Walkman. That kind of thing. We were really pretty sure we would just be trashing that nobody could possibly need old technologies, and he was so excited about them. And because he was such a nice guy, and I wanted to help him get started with his local business, or if he was started with it, keep it successful. And it was great that he was there, and that was making my life simple, not to have to figure out what to do with the stuff. And I just felt the nicest sense of trust with him and honesty and fairness. And I just said to him, why don't you just give me a price that you'd be happy to buy the stuff for? And he did. And I said, perfect. And he walked out with all of that stuff. So, yet again, it was an example of old stuff that I would think I would be making a video about. Nobody wants that stuff. And even then, we were able to get it sold. And it made me take a really good look at what we had around the house and realize just because we don't think our old stuff has any meaning anymore, somebody definitely might. And another example of that was crystal. Now, crystal is not exactly the most new look, for sure. There was a time when it was very popular. Nowadays, not so much. But that doesn't mean that nobody loves it. So again, I advertised a couple of small crystal, a little crystal bowl and a crystal candy dish. And somebody came to look at them. They were really low prices, a few dollars, nothing more. And same thing, she came, she loved them, it was her style. And she asked me, do you have any other crystal? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, and what I had done is I'd taken all of my other crystal, because somebody who wants one crystal item is probably going to want more. And I had taken all the rest of them and I put them on display over the fireplace. And when she saw them all together and with them all complementing one another, and she loves crystal, and she saw that the prices were really fair, guess what? She walked out with all of it. Now, small deals here and there, of course, they don't add up to much, but the magic is in getting everything out the door. That's when those small prices start to really add up to something meaningful. Of course, we sold the couches and the coffee tables, but just to give an idea about that, and of course, I can't speak for everybody, but the people that I knew that were selling furniture when they moved out, and just furniture, not the little doodads and trinkets and decoys, but just the furniture. I saw people with definitely higher end furnishings than what we had. And the range that I saw people selling out their whole house for was between $3,000 to $7,000. We got 16,000. So it was clearly not a small amount. And it was certainly not, we're so far from saying nobody wants our stuff. We think we did very, very well with it. And I keep talking about the money, the $16,000, the $75 golf clubs. I don't know if I mentioned before, but that's what I sold them for. Might not sound like a lot of money, but again, it was all the little items and the way they added up to a good chunk of change. But again, it really wasn't just about the money. And one of the things that this whole process was about, in addition to, yes, recouping some money on your property, was the feeling of emptying out and decluttering and letting go of your past and opening up space to be welcoming the future. And I have to say, the fact that the big trash bags are always black, it's so appropriate because for me, I had for such a long time been feeling this sense of black clouds renting space in my brain. Every time I took out one more black bag of stuff to sell it to the next person or donate it or whatever, it was this feeling of one of those black clouds in my head just dissipating and a little bit more sunshine being able to come peeking through. I felt so happy and so free and liberated going through this process. And that was one of the greatest things about it. It was easily up there with the excitement of making, as I mentioned before, a good chunk of change. Another meaningful part of going through all of this was the emotional transformation and kind of preparing to let go of things that, not just things that were useful or things that you paid a lot of money for and felt like, "Oh, I just can't let these things go." It was way beyond that. It's, of course, you're also dealing with letting go of things that mean so much to you, things from your past, really special memories. And so much of that you simply don't have room for anymore. You simply don't have the space, and you're getting rid of those things as well. Preparing for that part of letting everything go, I think makes more sense for a future video because I don't want this to get too long and kind of going off in every direction. So this video, I really wanted to talk about the fact that yes, people want your stuff, and yes, you can get paid off for it, and even do it while you're not selling things for very much money at all, so that you end up with this really good feeling. With the people that you meet in the process who are loving the fact that this is making their lives a lot simpler, and you're loving the fact that they're loving what you had up until now. So there is that, and as I said, I wanted to make this video about that. But there are going to be a couple future videos dealing with the emotional part. That's a big deal. Before that, I'm going to talk about exactly how to sell, what the different options are for unloading your stuff, and how to do it as quickly as you can, because you don't want to be working on this for 5 years unless you know that you're going to be retiring in 5 years and you have that kind of time. That's great. But most people, reality is they have a year or under a year. So I want to talk about in the next video how this is doable in that much time so that everything gets done and you make some decent money, and at the same time you make a lot of buyers really, really happy with what they're getting at the prices that they're getting them for. So I hope you liked this video, and if you did, I hope you will like this video and consider subscribing, because we have more content on the way related to this and just nomad travel in general. Okay, bye.